So when I was like 11 years old or so, a neighbor came and introduced me to Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast, and I didn't understand much about that, having no church background. But today's reading would have revealed it to me. We're reading about the
Mm,
number of the beast today,
yeah,
and
six
a
six
great
six.
dragon and a woman. Well, there's 616 too, right? Like there's different
Yeah, it's six
versions of.
six. It's 666. I mean, some maybe some of the copiers put one instead, but
Are you?
mainly
Do
666.
you have a theory on what that?
Yeah, sure. It's my birthday.
I,
Um,
I know that. That was when I
yeah,
knew that. Actually, that'll give people fodder. I was referred to. I saw in a
I
comment
I
this
came
morning.
into my satanic powers on my 50th birthday because my 50th birthday was 666.
That was actually the first birthday that I. Well, it was I got to correct myself. It was the second birthday that I would have spent with you. The first one, I barely knew you. Like I started in 2005 when I was allowed to play guitar and shut my trap in May of 2005. Your birthday's June
No
6th.
singing, no
And
singing
then,
Christian songs
but
if you don't
my
believe in them.
but my first birthday with my pastor as a Christian, my pastor's it's 666 is his birthday.
Yeah, my 50th birthday,
I think
baby.
that meant a lot. So I was referred to. I saw a comment this morning. Somebody had called me here a morally bankrupt lawyer.
Bankrupt.
Morally, though,
Oh, morally?
he
Well,
didn't. He wouldn't know
yeah.
fiscally, but morally
The
bankrupt.
the trouble with the trouble with the moral talk is it just depends on uh, who's making the judgment. It's just like hate crime or whatever. Who gets to decide what hate is? I mean,
Well, it's
hate
interesting that you.
crime. Oh yeah, hate means you disagree with me. That's what it basically is in today's judicial system.
Yeah,
You
the
know,
funny thing is that
hate crime, moral bankrupt.
yeah, hey, well, the person said like when I've criticized, sometimes we criticize people. Maybe we shouldn't do it, particularly online. We don't know people that well, but I have done it, and every time I criticize someone, and interestingly enough, though, see that we align that with like leftist thinking and stuff. This person is not a leftist that
Yeah.
accuses me of having. You want to know why I'm accused by this person on the right for criticizing him? He says that I do a hate crime. You want to know why it's a hate crime?
Mm.
Because apparently, and I can't see in the video, and there's other people that I've seen that you can tell they have this. He has cerebral palsy. So if you criticize someone with cerebral palsy, you are committing a hate crime
Mm.
because he's disabled. Because of his disability,
Oh,
that's why.
so you can't make fun of me, criticize me because I'm bald.
Yes, well, in theory, or
I mean, well, yeah, there again, disability. Okay, well,
or maybe
that's.
you're
I mean, you're
morally
disabled.
bankrupt.
You're disabled.
I am. I
You,
get gout sometimes.
yeah, and you live in California where you're under
But
a lot of unfair pressure with regulations and all that. And you got to try to be an attorney and
and
ugh,
and in
in
California,
California.
yeah,
Oh my gosh.
sometimes in California too, you have these doubts about your gender, and it's
Oh,
you.
okay. Your gender is pretty clear. You're beta male. Don't worry about it.
All right, beta for sure.
I give you beta because
See, now
you have that.
you're giving people more fodder.
You have no. You just have such a sensitive side to you, Rob.
I do. But to get us back into focus, St. Tommy's going to get us there. He says, the Lord Jesus Christ was crucified, buried, and rose from the dead on the third day for the
He
forgiveness of sin.
was.
Yeah, amen.
He
Amen.
was crucified, but now he's
So,
alive.
so great. He's alive.
He's
So
alive.
the sad part about, who was it? Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast is it was
Six
a
six
good
six.
song.
Yeah,
Have you, have you heard it?
I have.
Hell and fire were born to be
Yeah,
released.
yeah. I mean, I
Um,
didn't go through any heavy metal. I never purchased heavy metal music, but
Never.
I certainly appreciate. I appreciate. It's kind of like. it gets you pumped up for working out or before a game, you could play. I mean, I don't know if I'd be,
It does,
you
but
got your
I
high school basketball team go, six, six, six. It's the mark of the beast.
well, here's the thing. This is the funny thing. It was probably my one of my first spiritual experiences. At the time, I think I was going to Hebrew school. I didn't have much spiritual experience there. It was just a thorn in my side going to Hebrew school. But I remember feeling this is kind of like how the spirit goes. I didn't have a Christian background, but I remember
Mhm.
my neighbor Peter Bogan, this kid, same age, same grade. He comes across the street. He brings the cassette and we're listening to it, and something inside me felt wrong. Like it just
Oh, there
felt
you go.
wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that, and uh, it's interesting how
Mm.
that happens. And I had no basis upon which to feel uncomfortable with the song, but I
Mm.
did, and
There you
and
go.
I remember that, and I can't explain it. So before I guess maybe as we're about to get into the reading, Revelation 12 to 14, and the beast and Satan, and the lamb and the 144,000 and the woman. I mean, what would do you want to do a preamble on 666 and what?
Well, 666, I mean, the central, one of the central characters of the enemy is Nero. And Nero, uh, he pops up in these specific chapters. And so we're going to see them. I mean, that would be you know, that would be my commentary on uh, if you're going to if you're going to take the writing as something that's contemporary, that's going to be happening as we've been doing here.
Mhm.
You get uh, there's you'll recall that there's a system of numerology where numbers, obviously in the Hebrew, the numbers are very important, but also numbers are they used in the Greco-Roman world as well as the Jewish world. They used numbers and they had significance, but they also used you can also use numbers as uh, kind of code language, and so if John is writing from a Roman prison, he is speaking to Christians who are under persecution by Nero. His writings don't get out of the prison without them being read by the the guards or whatever, the people that are in charge. And that's the way it is today, by the way, in prison. That all your mail and everything that's being read, the mail that you send and the mail that you receive.
So this is some
Which,
kind of coded message,
yeah, it
perhaps
is definitely,
representing.
because it's like if you take Caesar, which would be the title for the emperor, Caesar Nero, in Hebrew, and spell it out in Hebrew. You add up all the numbers. So each letter, you know how to do codes. Each letter is a number, and then you just take the letters and you add them up, and guess what you get? 666.
Hmm.
So it's not 666; it's 666. And Nero, Nero Caesar, his title is 666 in the Hebrew language.
Numbers are in Revelation in particular. We take them a
They're all
little bit
over
for
there.
granted. Yeah, I'm looking like right now in today's reading, we're going to see a red dragon has 7 heads, 10 horns,
And I
seven
could,
diadems on his head.
yeah, and we'll
This,
talk about
this,
that too.
yeah, this
Yeah.
woman, has 12 stars that are rotating around her head. 12,
Hmm.
and then 666, and then the number of days that she was going to. I counted something. We're going to read. Oh,
Well, it's 42 months again is one of the things that
well,
happens.
I don't. It
That's
was
coming up.
1,260 days. I divided it.
Hmm.
And it came out to 3.4520547945205448 years. So it's not like an even
Oh,
number.
that
It's not.
sounds like almost like pi, doesn't it?
I know. I know. It's just all these.
Woo.
There had to be some kind of meaning to these. Is there's
Well, they did. Yeah.
oftentimes they're
Yeah.
rounded off days.
And they are. Well, no, it's yeah. It's all the Hebrew or Jewish. numerology is really the basis for, and what we're doing is we're seeing prophecy, but it's being given in symbolic language. So one of the theories is perhaps John is writing in symbolic language for so that the people can understand that this is symbolic. And another way of looking at it is, like I say, then the Romans aren't going to, destroy the letters or whatever that he's sending because he's cutting up on Rome. He's totally cutting up on Rome right here. And so you can't cut up, he's getting censored if he does that. They're going to take his letters and not mail them, or as it were, let them be delivered.
Right.
And so he writes in that code language in order for, because the guards, they don't know Hebrew, and they don't know the numerology of the Jewish people at the time.
I
So
go
it's
back
really
to my
interesting.
I go back to my childhood and think about the Captain Crunch decoder. There was a
Yeah, it's like
certain
a
decoder.
decoding.
So I
Right.
want it would be
Right.
really cool if we could find a written decoder somewhere. I don't think anything like that's been found. I guess they just had a
Well, you could just take the Hebrew alphabet and then give it a number. It's just like, and then you just add those up. And but the other like years and months and all that,
mm,
those are all significant, theologically significant, spiritually significant. Okay, so some of it is actually practically significant, but so it's like pretty fascinating. I mean, there's whole books, and people spend their whole career doing the numerology from the Hebrew and the Old
yeah.
Testament and New
Sometimes all
Testament.
that goes a little too far. There's people,
Yeah,
with the
but
Bible
I
codes
mean, it's
and
interesting. I mean, it's like,
yeah,
do we live in a simulation? Yeah, and all that. So
yeah, exactly.
you know, so
All
there
right.
you
Well,
go.
why don't we with
All right,
that?
why don't we
Why don't we
read?
get
Yeah,
into
let's
the
go.
read? All
Now
right,
I want to get
read,
into it.
read.
I want
I
to get
got you.
into it, Reed. And
We're
then
gonna get.
another thing that we do here is we're studying in chronological order, and so I'm not going to uh, you know try to make show those connections. But if I were doing normal Bible study, there's a lot of connections to Revelation 17 that has a lot of these numbers, and it would be helpful to be clear in terms of the interpretations that I'm going to point out today. But we
All
don't
right.
need to look at it. You'll see it again when
No,
we
but
get to
we'll
Romans
keep that in
17.
mind.
Keep it
We
in
can
mind.
do
Yep.
that. Yeah, for Monday.
Okay.
So that's it's good. We're planting seeds. You're planting a seed. So let's get into the reading. Thank you, Petey. We'll be back with
All
you
right.
shortly. All right, that was cool. All right, Revelation really is fun. Um, and what makes as a literary device, what makes it even more fun is that we don't have all the answers with it. God has given us the ability to kind of reason through and to figure it out with the help of the Holy Spirit, obviously. We have to do these things as Christian brothers and sisters when we disagree with certain things with gentleness and with the idea of edifying. Obviously, we wouldn't believe in a particular uh, theology if we didn't do study and confirm it. But wise, different heads have different opinions, and the world keeps on spinning. But as Saint Tommy so wisely said on the bottom there, that's the brass tacks. That's what matters. So, on that note, let's get right into Revelation 12 and 14, see what the Holy Spirit has for us today. Thank you, Lord, for your word. We look forward to the discussion today in Jesus' name. Now, a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Then, being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on his heads. His tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. She bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. and her child was caught up to God and his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God that they should feed her there 1,260 days. And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, "Now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren, who accused them before our God day and night, has been cast down. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. And they did not love their lives to the death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has a short time." Now when the dragon saw that he had been cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and a half a time from the presence of the serpent. So the serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood. But the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshipped the dragon who gave authority to the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, who is able to make war with him?" And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. And then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and spoke like a dragon, And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. He performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Then I looked, and behold, a lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven like the voice of many waters, and like the voice of a loud thunder. And I heard the sound of harpists playing their harps. They sang as it were a new song before the throne, before the four living creatures and the elders. And no one could learn that song except the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. These are the ones who were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were redeemed from among men, being first fruits to God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no deceit, for they are without fault before the throne of God. Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, "Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made the heaven and earth, the sea, and springs of water." And another angel followed, saying, "Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she has made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication." And a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast in his image and receives his mark on his forehead or on his hand, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever. And they have no rest day or night who worship the beast in his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Then I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, "Write, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on." Yes, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors and their works follow them. Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and on the cloud sat one like the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him who sat in the crowd, "Thrust in your sickle and reap, for the time has come for you to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe." And so he who sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. Then another angel came out of the temple, which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. And another angel came out from the altar, who had power over fire. And he cried with a loud cry to him who had the sharp sickle, saying, "Thrust in your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe." And so the angel thrust a sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trampled outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the horses' bridles for 1,600 furlongs. Thank you, Lord, for your word. And thank you for blessing the discussion that we're about to have as I bring up PD. All right.
Okay, so let's just go through it. Start at the beginning, and we can take a look at some of the things that were happening. Well, first of all, the woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. One of the and I used this illustration in a sermon towards the end of my time, and you were there. My time at Lifehouse Church, and we had I had that illustration of a red dragon in the manger, the nativity scene. And so the reason is that, like, for example, in the Roman Catholic tradition, when they read this, they think the woman is Mary. And other interpreters uh, would have said that the woman is the church.
Hmm.
It's Israel first, okay? It's God's people, all right? God's people. And then the church obviously becomes, the new Israel because through Jesus, the Old Testament is fulfilled. So then you see these various pictures. I like that picture of the red dragon in the nativity scene just because it's cool.
Yeah.
And it makes connections here. It makes connections. And so what we're talking about is we're talking about time on earth and we're talking about time in the heavens, in heaven. Now heaven's time is like uh, it's not linear. And so this could certainly be a description of the spiritual battles in heaven throughout, throughout eternity, beginning even before the creation of the world. And so we see here, however, when we look at 12 stars on her garland, what would that would signify, just like we've done before now in Revelation, 12 tribes of Israel, 12
Mm-hmm.
apostles, and so forth. But 12 tribes of Israel, God's chosen people, God's people.
Mm-hmm.
And then here comes the red dragon, 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 diadems on his heads. Okay, so later, what we're going to see, like I said in Revelation 17, I believe, it talks about it as instead of heads, it has mountains. The word mountains. So it's a parallel to this account. Well, 7 mountains. What are the 7 mountains? Well, there's 7 hills. 7 hills of what? 7 hills of Rome. Famously, when we speak about the actual city of Rome, there's 7 hills, and that was one of the aspects of Roman teaching from ancient time to now. There's 7 hills surrounding Rome. So we have this red dragon who has these 7 heads, and there also what we will see is there were 7 Caesars prior to you know the destruction of Jerusalem. So the first 5 of them died. The sixth one is Nero, and he he is alive, during this writing. However, he is going to die because he's commit suicide. And then the seventh is the next, Caesar, and then we have a whole bunch of turmoil and all that in Rome until they finally figure that out. It takes a while. So I mean, Rome was really in a bind after. I mean, the guy that replaced Nero, he was only there, I don't know, 6 months or something. And then they had these big battles. Who's going to be the next emperor? They finally figured it out and brought together power again. So here we go.
I have a question.
Satan. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's go here. So, the interpretations of. I mean, I saw Mary as I was reading this, and the reason is that it talks about she bearing this male child,
Right.
um, and
Well, we
so
definitely know that the child is Jesus.
okay, but
There's undoubtedly.
for the interpretation that it's the church, is it really like by the church, the ecclesia? It's really like the pre-Christian ecclesia, the line of
It would
David.
be. It would be.
The
Yeah, I mean,
12
what we're
tribes.
getting. Yeah, what we're getting here. We're kind of getting, once again. You got the symbolism that's really amazing because we got the symbolism of the story of Israel in Egypt and the Exodus and everything. It's all here, and we have the symbolism of Jesus himself. We know that this male child is Jesus, will rule all nations with a rod of iron.
Hmm.
So, and it's all nations. And we have again, there's two different symbolisms you could see here. If that's Israel, if that's the church, then they're gonna escape, flee to the wilderness, right? We got the wilderness wanderings where the Israelites escaped from Egypt. And we're gonna see later when we talk about the sea and all that, how that makes sense. However, also, where did Mary and Joseph and Jesus go? They escaped, and the dragon is trying to kill them. And so, who's the dragon? The Romans are the dragon. Also, in other words, when you see that, wherever Satan has the greatest influence on earth, right? It says on earth. So Satan and the angels that followed him, who were trying to work against God's rule, they were booted out of the heavens. Okay? It says that we get a third. Like stars are always a picture of heavenly spiritual beings. So they thought that the stars were these actual spiritual beings. So it's the divine council. It could be other angels. Satan gets booted out along with those who were following him, and they're sent to Earth. Well, then they're going to try to work their nastiness on Earth, and the child is saved, right? And you have that
Isn't it
double way of
interesting with the Exodus theme where the child is saved? That there's a reference here, as you say, to the Exodus, but a part of the saving of this child is a return to the place where the Exodus occurred. They
right,
seek refuge in Egypt, right? I
right,
find that pretty interesting as a part of God's
yeah.
story.
And then they should feed her there, and so and Mary and Joseph and Jesus survived in Egypt. They escaped and they survived there. And note, okay, again, note Herod, King Herod. So we got the Rome following Satan, and we got the uh, King Herod following Satan, like the Jewish. You've got the Jewish enemy, the persecution of Christians, and you've got the Roman enemy, Roman persecution. It can be wrapped up in this, right? And so we see she fled in the wilderness from Herod and his people, which would be the Jewish people that oppose Jesus, that oppose the Messiah. And then, interestingly enough, so like you say, it kind of connects to Egypt. So that escape, and just as a side note for everyone that's listening to this study, one of the questions that would be asked is, okay, so Mary, Joseph, and Jesus, what did they have, a bunch of money or something? How would they be able to go to Egypt and survive for like 3 years or whatever it was? Well, I guess it's probably about 3 years. The wise men, those magi, what did they do? They brought them gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So they got a ton of gold, probably, and that would finance their time in Egypt. And then what else? Joseph and Mary and Jesus go back to Nazareth, and Joseph builds up his business. I thought they were poor peasants and all that. Now he's got enough money to, run his own business, and Jesus is
That's
working for his
that.
dad.
That's when we bring in our own context, because frankincense and myrrh and those things, they were valuable things. But to us,
Right,
when you go to the mall and you go, okay, get a $60 bottle of perfume to give to my significant other, something. So we don't really recognize the fact that this would have been able to
right.
finance them
In
for a lot.
particular, the gold, because yeah, and the symbolism of the myrrh, frankincense and myrrh would be used for embalming, and so that's a symbolism of a foretaste of Christ being crucified and
Hmm.
then raised from the dead. And but he is, he's embalmed with the spices and all that.
Cool.
All right, so here we go. So we've got this. We have this vision that John is receiving from Jesus of Satan and his demonic cohorts are on earth trying to drum up bad business, right? And Satan's job prior to that was to be the prosecuting attorney in heaven. So the Satan in the Old Testament is totally a servant of God, and he's not doesn't really have this horrible, evil kind of stigma. In the New Testament, he does, but in the Old Testament, it's like he's the accuser. So he's gonna say, "Yeah, human beings. Remember, the reason they're cast out is because they hate human beings because they thought they should rule with God, and God is saying, no, humans are more important than you. They're gonna rule."
Mm.
And they don't the Satan and the other angel, they didn't want to deal with that. They wanted to be against it. So now he is on earth doing his best to try to, provide problems for us. But guess what? If he attacks those who know Jesus and love him and trust in him, they they will overcome. And by the blood of the lamb and by the word of their testimony, knowing my testimony is I trust in Jesus as my Lord and Savior. I surrender my life to him. And that blood on the cross provides forgiveness of sin and new life for me. And so we see this phrase, they did not love their lives to the death. In other words, they didn't try to protect their lives and falsely say, yeah, I worship the Caesar now. Not, I don't worship Jesus. I don't, trying to save themselves. No, they become martyred because they're not willing to lie and say that Caesar is God. I say, nope, Jesus is God.
He who loses their life will get it. Yeah. So
Hmm.
it's dying to self. All
Yep.
these messages of the gospel. Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
So keep going, and then we could see some fun stuff.
Fun. We like
Yeah.
spears and fighting.
Okay. So the church now we're looking at this from you can say Israel during the and Egypt during the time when they left, but you can also say the church itself. Uh, right at this point, the Christians during the 60s in the Holy Land and in the Roman Empire and all that. So I just think this is kind of interesting that the serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman, if the woman was the tribes of Israel, right?
Yeah, I
Well,
was trying to figure that.
that's
I
like
don't
the
know what
Red
that is.
Sea. That's like the Red Sea, and the waters are going to the waters. They're trying to go through the waters. There's all the water of the Red Sea, and guess what happens? Whoosh, it splits. The earth helped the woman. Earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood. So, in
Ah,
other words, it becomes dry land because it opens up and the water goes down. And so now you have dry land. And so the sea is, many times, the sea is the realm of the evil, of the dragon, and even in Egyptian times. So the Israelites were not fond of, sailing and things like that on the Mediterranean Sea because they thought that that's where the demons dwell and that's where the great serpent is and all that. But they got through it. And then the dragon is enraged and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring. So that's what's happening right now in the 60s in Israel, in Jerusalem and the surrounding area. That's what's going on. And the Christians are being persecuted, not just by the Romans, they're being persecuted by their fellow Jews. And I'll explain what happens as we get to it. But anyway, that's what's going on right now. And so here comes the beast out of the sea. Well, the beast, not Satan now, it'd be Rome, rising up of the sea. Where does Rome come from? Rome comes from all those ships that are coming from Rome, coming into the Holy Land,
Mm.
rising up from the sea. Here comes all those Roman legions, and we have seven heads. Those seven heads would be a sign of those Caesars, but also it would be a sign of the mountain, seven hills of Rome. So this is Rome coming, and what he gave their power and the authority. So Rome has it, but it says one of the heads is mortally wounded. This is Nero, who commits suicide, and his deadly wound was healed, meaning that didn't stop Rome. They just got new Caesars after. I mean, they had some struggles, right? But they got new Caesars. But it says they worshiped the dragon. The people worshiped the dragon, meaning they followed Rome, the people in Israel. So these are the unrepentant Jewish people who were against the Messiah, against Jesus himself. And so they're doing what Rome says. And it says that um, he was given authority for 42 months. Well, guess what? It was 42 months from the the persecution of the Christians and Jews are combined now because they're living in Jerusalem, right? The persecution by Rome, this awful, horrible, bloody mess until that began in 64 and it ended in 68. Remember, we had that lull period that I talked about at 68 with the death of Nero, his suicide. That's 42 months. So isn't it interesting? This already predicts exactly that. And so they were granted to make war on the saints. Those are the Christians. Those are the Jews who did not deny Christ, and they were given the power to overcome it. And so those who worship Rome and all that, no, they're going to hell because and they're going to be judged. This is the generation that Jesus talks about in the Gospels, saying this generation is not going to, it is not going to disappear until the judgment. And here's the judgment coming. He says, well, if you're following Rome and doing their thing, then what's going to happen? So he's saying this to the Romans themselves. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. He who supports those who are killing with the sword, meaning the persecution of the Christians, must themselves be killed. That's the patience of the saints waiting, during this time. Well, sure enough, that's what's going to happen with the fall of Jerusalem, because they're going to be destroyed. The Jews that are left over are going to be destroyed. Who are there? Right? And then here comes another beast. Well, who is this? Well, that beast would be the local powers, the local communities and kingdoms throughout the Roman Empire. So he exercises just like the first beast. In other words, he's following the Roman lead. So we got, in other words, we don't have destruction just in Jerusalem. We got destruction all over the Roman Empire against Jews and against the Jews, and then by default the Christians because they're rebelling against Rome. And so there's other places besides um, just in Jerusalem that these things are happening. Okay. And so then we see that again, Rome was granted this power to do God's work. This is the wrath of God against the Jews who denied Jesus and who were complicit to his crucifixion. And so now here comes that wrath, right? But this is happening all over the Roman Empire too. And so we start hearing about they're going to have marks in order to be able to buy and sell. Well, they actually did that. So during the persecution of the Christians and the Jews who were opposed to the Christians were complicit with this too. They would get the Romans would give the Jews who are not Christian, they would give them the opportunity to have certain marks. They could put the marks on their business or whatever, or just like papers or whatever, so that they could sell, goods and services in Rome. Well, that, or excuse me, in the Roman Empire. But now we have um, this is all prior to the persecution, Rome coming in and destroying Jerusalem, right? It's all prior to that. Well, what the Jews were doing, who were opposed to the Christians, is they were having the Christian businesses and all that were around town in various places. They would put a mark on their business to show that don't go here. These are
Wow.
Christians. They're not real Jews. Remember, the Jews kicked the Christians out of the synagogues? Well, now they're marking their businesses so that nobody uses them.
Hmm.
Sounds like today. I mean, this is exactly what, the well,
Cancel
Canada and the
culture.
United States, the deep state. Right now, exactly. You've heard about banks that debank people who are constitutionalists. The people who are in strong free speech constitutionalists. That's what's happening to them. It's in the current news right now that they did that in Canada against the truckers and against people who were giving money to the truckers. They basically seized their bank accounts, and that's what they're doing right now in the United
Hmm.
States with some pretty prominent figures. And that's what that means is I'm going to cancel you so you can't do business, so that the Christians will be destroyed anyway because they're not going to be able to survive. And those are the marks that we see. So this is all really interesting stuff because it connects to today. It's the
Well,
same
it's interesting
methodology.
how that was part of the Holocaust as well. With
Yeah, same thing. Yes,
yeah.
exactly. The Holocaust. Yeah, you'd think the Holocaust definitely that's what they were doing is putting marks on those businesses
They just
in
like write
Germany and other.
Juden,
Yeah,
write Juden
yeah,
on their business.
Juden. Yeah, but we have evidence that that's what they did. That the Jewish people who followed the Romans, in other words, they were complicit with the Romans. They did that to their Christian brothers and sisters who they had booted out of the synagogue to make
I
sure
think
that,
we can look at that as again, sort of Ecclesiastes thing. Like the more things change, the more they stay the same. That Satan's tactics, demonic tactics, are the same. Like
yeah,
it's
right,
happening today, as you say. It was happening
yeah,
in the 1940s. It's not. It shouldn't be a surprise for us,
right,
for those who believe. Yeah.
right. So now we got the 144,000, in the Lamb, and basically saying the destruction of Jerusalem and everything awful, horrible, but Christians, you're going to survive and thrive. Here comes the new song, you know. So we have this vision of what's going to happen.
I wish it was the sound of hard electric guitars and heavy
Yeah,
drums, though.
yeah.
'Cause this
Or
is
you mean
supporting
like
the old folks who turn
Iron
their
Maiden
hearing
or
aids
whatever?
off.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like
There you go.
this is their support proof verse to go.
Yeah, but
No,
then
we
you
don't
got
need
the
loud music
you
and
don't want
show.
to hurt you don't want to hurt eardrums and all that.
I
When
get
you get
well.
my age, Rob, start losing your hearing.
I already have, man. That's why I wear headphones, and I have turned my volume up, and I can hear what people are saying. I told you
There you
that
go.
already. I was in court
I know. Yeah, yeah, that's right.
recently. I'm like, what did you say? Yeah. Anyway,
So those who are again, we have connections in Revelation, connections to the Old Testament teaching that God is married to Israel, to the people of Israel. That's his wife, and she is unfaithful to him. She's an adulterer. And so, what happens when you're an adulterer in the Old Testament days? You get stoned to death. Well, that's what. So what we get here are connections to the Jews in Jerusalem, that generation that Jesus said, you're going to be judged. They are the ones who were unfaithful to God. And so they are going to be destroyed. Whereas the Christians, they're the virgins. In other words, they're married to God and they're monogamous with God. That picture, that
yeah, that's
symbol.
the way I read that. Yeah, is that
Yeah.
there's
So isn't
no
that
other
interesting?
husband but
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
So they will be redeemed, being first fruit, right? Being the first fruit. So it starts with the lamb and then them. And they won't have fault before the throne. In other words, they're going to survive. So if I'm reading this in the first century, I'm going, man, I see blood in the streets. I see people getting killed all around. I'm going to get killed. But guess what? I'm going to be before the throne of God. And God is declaring me clean and pure through the blood of the Lamb.
Hmm. these angels that are flying around, though. There's some. They've got some jobs. There were a lot of them, though. It mentions three
Yeah.
angels, but I felt
Well,
like that a
here we
bunch of
do
them
see
are
the
coming.
yeah, and so here we do see some of them are saying, the gospel is going to be preached, and that's the evangelical euangelion,
The
the good news.
everlasting
The
gospel.
good
I love
news.
that.
It's going to be boom, 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 get preached and all that. The hour of judgment has come, all right, meaning that Jerusalem is going to fall. And sure enough, Babylon has fallen, the great city. So that would make those connections to Rome and Egypt and all the other powers. And now we see it, though. They're going to. So here we have the wrath of God, which is poured out. And it's literally, I mean, again, Josephus in his writings and wars said that the blood was literally pouring out in the streets. There were like rivers, streams of blood in Jerusalem from all the people that are getting slaughtered.
Wow.
And sure enough, that did happen. And so this is like the wine of the wrath of God. And this is where we get that term grapes of wrath. And so not often do we realize that God's judgment is not just something that's going to happen someday. It happens at times now.
And
And
there's a
sure enough,
precursor of it when they described the Levitical laws. When
yes,
when it was reinstituted, it was described as the sacrificial blood being like puddled, like you couldn't walk anywhere. It'd be like to almost to your knees, the way that it'd be described. And it seems to me that that was God's sort of precursor to say, there's going to be a different kind of slaughter, one that doesn't bring salvation, but one that brings wrath.
all right. So basically, we
Um,
see here they're receiving the mark on their forehead, which is the one that Rome gives, right? So they're being complicit with Rome. These are the Jews that are left over here in Jerusalem and so forth, complicit with Rome, and they're going to get the full strength of the cup of the indignation, meaning literally first century Jews in 60, 970 AD. Uh, and then we get this connection to the symbolic language of fire and brimstone. So it's symbolic, but it's also literal because remember what I talked about. They're shooting fiery boulders and spears and so forth into Jerusalem itself. That's how Jerusalem gets destroyed because it gets
Yeah, I was
burned
going to tell you,
down.
there's a great scene. You'll like it because you like swords
Oh,
and
and
stuff.
that gladiator.
Gladiator 2. The very
All right.
beginning of Gladiator 2 has the Romans coming out of the sea, sort of like the vision we saw here, and they're
Uh,
shooting the catapults of fire at the
ah.
walls of I forget what city it was, but
Oh, okay.
probably
There you
Greek.
go.
Yeah,
All right. Yeah, I'm going to see that movie
you
definitely.
should see it. It's very, very good. I loved it.
Yeah. So the patience of the saints back again, right? And they keep these are the Christians who even during this horrible persecution, many of them are dying as well. But they're saying, "Be patient. You are blessed when you die because you get to live with the Lord forever." See that? Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. They may rest from their labors and their works follow them.
Mm.
Then here
And
comes
then
Daniel
Daniel.
7.
Hmm.
Yeah. Here comes Daniel 7 with Jesus, the Son of Man. He's coming for the harvest and all that. And there's the grapes of wrath,
I
that I
don't
was talking
remember in
about.
Daniel 7 that he's carrying a sickle, though. It was just like
I don't
he's
know. He
coming
may.
out the clouds.
I saw that this morning when I was reading through this, and I'm like, I wonder if did he have a sickle? I think he did.
Uh,
He might have because, and it also alludes to Jesus in Matthew, talking about the sickle
Well,
and
I see that
taking out the harvest, both
there's two
the
coming
grain
from the
and the
clouds,
weed.
though.
Yeah.
Isn't there like two coming from the clouds? The Son of Man coming from the clouds the first time, the Word becoming flesh. That's the one
Mhm.
Jesus refers to himself as that, and Revelation's kind of like referring to this second coming, right? It's a second coming
Yeah.
where he'll come with a
Well, then
sickle.
the other angel here is, uh, so in other words, the first one really seems like he's saving the Christians. And the other one is bringing the wrath, you know, it signifies bringing the wrath. Came
And
down
then another
out of the,
comes, and he has a sickle too.
right.
He's helping out. Wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty scary.
So they're
Uh,
getting destroyed. And sure enough, that is what happens. The great winepress of the wrath of God. And notice it's outside of the city, which can symbolize that's where Jesus is crucified. So even that blood that's outside of the city can save. In other words, if they repent, they are covered with the blood of the Lamb. So isn't that interesting? The winepress is trampled outside the city. So it's like it's not saying every single Jewish person who supported the Romans and was opposed to the Christians is going to be destroyed. That blood came, the blood of the Lamb is. It sounds like it's still available, which makes it really interesting.
1,600 furlongs.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know what the heck that is.
I don't know what that means.
My mom asks, she says, "Are we living in the time of the end now?" Well, every day is
Yeah,
a
we
step
are. Well, we
closer.
are
Yeah.
because the time of the end started with the ascension of Jesus to heaven. So we're living in it right now. So we are in the end times right now. It's we're he's going to come back again. But in the meantime, this is the end times. We're not waiting for the end times. This is the end times. We're in it. The new
And we
kingdom
see it. We see
is
the
coming.
as we
Yeah, we
talked
see the
about
new
with the
kingdom coming.
Holocaust, and as we talked about with
Yeah.
current
As
Canada and
heaven
UK,
and
as
earth are
Bill says.
becoming one. Yeah,
Yeah.
we got the horrible things that are happening, but we have amazing things that are happening. I mean, almost, extreme poverty and world, extreme hunger and all that. That's being booted out. I mean, there's very few people who are in extreme poverty in the world. The pandemic put a kibosh on some of it, but it's coming back again. So, I mean, it's like, the estimates are extreme poverty, which would mean, starvation and all. We've got all the resources now. The reason that people starve is because of corrupt governments who are there with the people who are starving. So anything that we send or any other individually or government wise money we send and resources and all that, it hardly ever gets to the people who are the most extreme poverty. It hardly gets to them because of the corruption. So to say, oh God, please, you know, save the hungry people in the world. Well, he already has. I mean, there's enough supplies right now. That's not
Yeah,
the case.
and that's not to get
That's not the
political
case
on
a
it,
hundred. That's not the case 100 years ago,
but
but it
we
is
are
now.
our society though is geared towards continuing to make the rich richer though.
Well, that's the of all these countries. Yeah, I mean, the
Yeah,
people who are those are the people who are taken. I mean, if you
feeding
study,
it. Yeah,
yeah,
it,
just study. Yeah, when you study where our, where charities and where even charities, but government funds especially, where that goes, it's ridiculous because what it is just supporting the tyrants that are in those countries and they just take it.
mm-hmm.
We see that all the time, and so it's like I'm just giving an example. We can't say, "Oh God, how could there be a loving God if people are starving?" Well, they could. People don't need to starve anymore. There's plenty of resources that are out there.
Oh yeah,
It's just got to get to the people. And then the other thing is what's saving the extreme poverty, why people are getting out of it is because of microeconomics, capitalism, basically. They're able to buy and sell and start their own small businesses. And that's really interesting how that's happening.
yeah. Bill says there's enough arable land on Earth to feed 70 billion people, and they say 8 billion
Yeah,
is
there's not a, yeah, we need more people, not less. So if you're young, get married, have
be
kids.
fruitful,
We
be
need
fruitful
fruit.
and multiply.
Ah, ah.
Gosh, sure, why not?
Yeah, get
AJ,
married
not
and
too
have
soon,
kids.
buddy. AJ
Get
got into
married.
Cal State Northridge, so we know
Oh,
that
good.
he's
Okay.
he's at least going to college somewhere.
All
See,
right.
they had free dress day at school, so he wore Marie's Cal State Northridge
Very cool. Yeah.
sweater. Yeah, so
All
but they
right.
gave me a little tear because it was like my boys always grows up.
Yeah. There you
It's
go.
kind of scary how fast it goes. So thank you, PD. That was
All
great,
right.
and I hope that was helpful.
Yeah.
So
And everybody remember, it's not speaking like this is coming from God to my mouth or God to Rob's mouth. We are commenting on scripture. We're not saying this is exactly what it is. And if you think that those things symbolize something else, you're
you're
wrong.
going
Now,
to hell.
no, we're not saying, I'm not saying that. I'm
Oh,
just
you're
this.
not? I thought
You
you
may
were.
be, but I'm
All
not
right.
saying that. So,
Dang.
in other words, and we can see that you got, like we were just seeing, Egypt coming out of Egypt, also escaping to Egypt. The mother of Jesus and the father of Jesus escaping. There's two different things, but they can, you could interpret that both ways.
But
I
that's
mean,
the
it's
beauty of the word. I mean, you've read this a
yeah,
billion times, but you're
yeah,
just as excited, almost, if not more
yeah. I
excited
can't
than
wait
the
to put
person
another
reading it.
dragon. I can't wait to put a dragon in my nativity scene. I just got to
I
find
want to think about
a red one.
my next record should have like a nativity scene and this
Oh,
evil
I've got
dragon
a
in the
really
back.
cool, I got a nativity scene that you got me, Rob. Remember? That's
Yeah,
up right now, baby. That's up. Nice.
I need to buy you a
Beautiful.
red dragon,
Yeah, there you go. It's
like
a
action
beautiful
figure.
nativity scene. Yeah.
I love
No,
that.
you know what's going to happen if I put that there? Nancy's going to have something to say. She
Well,
go,
see,
what are you
please,
doing with
no,
this dragon?
I'm gonna look at Amazon.
I'll sneak it in there. I'll put it behind the three magi coming in. I'll sneak it in there, then she won't see it.
I'm looking up Amazon red dragon. I don't think I have your Tennessee. Oh, this is pretty funny. Come on,
What?
come on. I'm gonna
Red
share
dragon?
this. Yeah, come on, pop this.
Oh, that's
Pop.
pretty.
Oh, why did it
That's
do that?
pretty big, though. That's pretty
Yeah,
big, probably.
pop
Oh
that
God,
guy into the nativity scene.
love
Come
it.
on,
There you
that's,
go,
that's awesome.
Red Dragon.
But now you know how much it would cost if I got it for you. You have to pop it in there.
I know, really. All
Come
right,
on.
very cool.
All right,
Hey, so
thank
yeah, so we'll
Monday,
come back Monday and we'll go for it.
and we'll end with 17. So maybe you can. It'll be the nice addendum for
Yeah, it'll kind
our
of talk about the
discussion
same things
today.
we talked about today.
Sounds
All
good.
righty. It was
Thanks,
seven.
Petey.
It was 14 degrees this morning, by the way.
That's Fahrenheit. You mean?
Where we are.
All
Yeah,
right. Well,
it's
chilly.
coldest
I mean,
coldest yet this year.
it's a
Coldest yet this
balmy,
year.
it's a balmy 65 right now.
Yeah.
Maybe here.
So
Sorry, that's
it's a
what you
little
like
different. It's a little different, dude.
for sure. All right, we'll stay warm.
All right, later.
See
Bye.
you later, Petey. All right, that's fun. I hope that you had, here's the ad right there. If you want a gold red dragon action figure for your for your nativity scene, fun stuff. Yeah, Marie wouldn't let me get away with that either. So I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah, thank you, Mom, for joining us here. Hope that you learned something too. The expression today about the gospel was the everlasting gospel. It is finished, as Jesus said. And what we read today is God has finished the reconciliation. He offers it to us as an olive branch. It's a horrible picture as it starts of his son Jesus nailed to a cross, bleeding and breathing his last. But we know how that story ends. He was buried, but he rose again, and he lives. And through him and through his life and through his resurrection, we live too. All those who believe, those who, as we read today, those who stay steadfast, those who overcome by belief in that blood of the Lamb. Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on, is the quote from today. So God bless you. Thank you for watching. Why don't we close out with Christmas is Christ. It's Christmas time. I got to do more. I did a version of Holy Night, which wasn't that bad, even with a cold. I might want to record that. We'll see. God bless you. See you on Monday. Have a great weekend, and be good to each other. Edify and support your neighbor. Love your neighbor. See you later.
I see the smile upon my baby's face, and I think about the year, all the toil, sweat, and tears, our family gathered around the Christmas tree, Christmas wrapping everywhere, Grandma rocking upon her chair. But in a joyful Christmas season, I sometimes forget the reason that in a manger dank and dark there was a baby born for us to reconcile all wicked men, that we might be born again. Christmas is more, much bigger than a retail store, much bigger than candy canes and Black Fridays. Christmas is Christ. Line up for the latest sale. Do we think about the year, all the toil, sweat, and tears? We rush the altar of our local malls, looking for the lowest price, no thought at all of God's own sacrifice. So in this joyful Christmas season, let's be mindful of the reason that in a manger long ago a baby was born to overthrow our castles and kingdoms built on sand, so that we might understand that Christmas is more, much bigger than a retail store, much bigger than candy canes and Black Fridays. Christmas is more, much bigger than the retail store, much bigger than candy canes and Black Fridays. Christmas is Christ. Christmas is Christ. Christmas is Christ.